So I get on the phone with the Charlotte GM, and he just tells me, "Hey, you know what's going on?" Like, yeah. And you got media in front of you and all that. And he goes, "Well, it's a good thing we're trading you because we couldn't have used you anyway." What? Okay. All right. So that's what happened on draft night. So I was already triggered.
Imagine saying that to one of the greatest players to ever live. Well, there have been times when certain teams did not know what they were giving up when they made these shocking trades. Let's talk about the top 5 biggest trades on a drafted player. At number 5, we're going to the 1982 draft where the Utah Jazz selected Dominique Wilkins with the number 3 pick, only to trade him away 2 months later to the Atlanta Hawks for John Drew and Freeman Williams. So the question is, why would a franchise that had been irrelevant for literally its entire existence up to that point trade away a player that would turn their fortunes around? Well, former Jazz player Mark Eaton gives us the answer according to the book, The 4 Commitments of a Winning Team. He recalled this, quote, "Things hit rock bottom when Coach Frank Layden, who was also our general manager at the time, got a call from our team owner. He told Layden that the team needed $1 million in order to make payroll on Monday, and he wondered if Layden had any ideas to come up with the money." End of quote. The brilliant idea was to trade Dominique Wilkins to the Atlanta Hawks, where owner Ted Turner had the $1 million to spare. So the question is, what if the Jazz were in a better economical state and they decided to keep the human highlight film? Well, the Jazz had another Hall of Fame player on the team, and that was Adrian Dantley. He is widely recognized as one of the most efficient scorers in NBA history. And in 1984, the Jazz had a pretty good squad along with high-flying Dale Griffith and Ricky Green. If you plug in Dominique there, you have one of the most dangerous offensive teams in the league, along with the Showtime Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. The best case scenario is that they rival the Lakers for years to come in the Western Conference. The worst case scenario, which is also the most likely scenario, is that Adrian Dantley complains about not getting enough touches with another volume shooter on the team, and he gets traded away as he did anyways in 1986. He just couldn't last anywhere. But that short 2 or 3 year run would have been fun to watch. At number 4, we're going to the 1987 draft where the Seattle Supersonics selected Scotty Pippen at the 5th pick, and then traded him away to the Chicago Bulls for Olden Polynice, who was the 8th pick in the draft. I mean, why? Well, at the time, it would have appeared that a defensive-minded center was just a better fit than having another wing player. So they gave away a player that was nothing but a journeyman for one of the greatest two-way players of all time. So if they decided to keep Pippen, what would have happened to the Sonics? Well, this was the same team that went to the conference finals in 1987 after finishing with a losing record. So this team showed that they had potential. The trio of Tom Chambers, Dale Ellis, and Xavier McDaniel was a dangerous one. They all averaged over 20 points per game. Imagine plugging in the defensive greatness of Scottie Pippen and his ability to get everyone involved with his playmaking skills. Then you had Nate McMillan, who was also a super underrated defender at the point guard position. So this could have been a nice squad, but we have to remember that this came during a time when the small ball concept was not very prevalent, so it didn't make sense to have all those wing players. But then again, they ended up losing Tom Chambers in the following season anyways, so I'm sure they were really kicking themselves when they saw what Pippen was accomplishing in Chicago. At number 3, we're going back to the 1996 draft where the Charlotte Hornets drafted Kobe Bryant with the 13th pick, but they traded him to the Lakers for Vlade Divac. We all know this story very well. The Lakers were looking to sign Shaquille O'Neal for the hefty price he was asking for, but they were giving away a lot of players to free up as much cap as possible. Divac was the last piece to have enough money to sign Shaq to LA. We've also heard the stories where Jerry West and Michael Cooper had a private workout with Kobe Bryant prior to draft day, and they quickly realized that they were witnessing a potential all-time great player. So Jerry West brilliantly killed 2 birds with 1 stone and formed one of the greatest duos in NBA history. It's also been well documented that Kobe was threatening that he would play overseas if New Jersey or the Hornets ended up picking him, so you can kinda say he forced his way to Los Angeles anyways. But this is a fun hypothetical scenario to talk about. How would have Kobe fared with the Hornets? Well, he would have ended up playing with Glenn Rice a lot sooner than he did, and he was an exceptional 3-point shooter. But other than that, they had Anthony Mason, Muggsy Buggs, Del Curry and an old Ricky Pierce. To be honest, the 1996 team looked much better on paper. They had Larry Johnson and Kenny Anderson, but they traded both of them away for inferior players. So something tells me that he wouldn't have lasted long there, not with everything that we know about Kobe. Needless to say, he was in much better hands with the Lakers. But add a player like that in a very weak Eastern Conference after Michael Jordan retired, and who knows what he could have accomplished. At number 2, we're going back to the 1998 draft where the Milwaukee Bucks drafted Dirk Nowitzki at the 9th spot, but they traded him and Pat Garrity for Robert Taylor, who was selected with the 6th pick by Dallas. Listen, I get that no one in their right mind could have predicted what Dirk ended up becoming. It's easy to make fun of a decision 25 years after the fact when no one really knew what his ceiling was. We understand that. But on the other hand, you drafted this player for a reason, so why not give him a chance to see what he's made of? Instead, Dallas gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they bit the bullet. There were even some people who were questioning if Don Nelson was crazy, but he ended up looking like a genius. But now let's talk about the what if. Listen, that Milwaukee Bucks team could have made a few finals appearances. You got Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell playing together, and we saw what they accomplished in 2001. Now add Dirk Nowitzki to that trio, and you got a championship contending team. And by 2001, Dirk was already averaging over 20 points per game, so they could have been a force in the Eastern Conference. Then think about this. Ray Allen played 19 years in the league, and Dirk played for 21 years. So this team is set for the next 2 decades with 2 of the greatest shooters of all time. That was in their hands, but they couldn't quite see the potential. At number 1, we're going back to the 1956 draft where the St. Louis Hawks selected Bill Russell with the 2nd pick, but they traded him away to the Boston Celtics for Ed McCauley, who was the 7th pick, and Cliff Hagan. That's right, Bob Pettit and Bill Russell were almost teammates, but Hawks owner Ben Kerner was more interested in having a player that was going to fill the stands than forming the greatest front court duo of the pre-merger and building the next great dynasty. So they decided to get the hometown kid in Cliff Hagan, who was a good player for his time. Now think about this. The Hawks missed out on having the MVP winners of the 1956 season, the 1958 season, and the 1959 season on the same team. They missed out on having the 2-time scoring champion and the player that led the league in rebounding for 3 consecutive years on the same team. They missed out on having the best scorer and the best defensive player on the same team. Now it's hard for me to say that the St. Louis Hawks would have duplicated the success that the Boston Celtics had in the 60s, but they would have at least dominated the late 50s and early 60s with multiple championships. But for reasons that had little to do with basketball, which included bigotry and short-sightedness, they gave that all up. Bob Pettit and the Hawks only won 1 title, while Bill Russell and the Celtics won 11 titles. But hey, at least Ben Kerner was able to make a nice quick buck. Serves him right. Now that's the end of the list. Are there any other trades that you would put in the top 5? Be sure to give your opinion in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video. Till next time.